Other than the silver fox look, dude, you don't look a day older than the last time I saw you.
Silver fox. My granddaughter said to me, "Papa, why do you have so much gray hair?" It's because I'm getting old, dear. Getting old.
It's deserved gray. You've earned it.
Yes, exactly. That's what I like to think.
35 years plus at KSDK.
Yeah,
Crazy.
it was 36 on the 8th of July. So a long darn time.
You know, when you walked into the doors that day, you know you'd still be there 36 years later.
Oh, sure. I had been in Tucson, New Orleans, Kansas City, and St. Louis, all within 7 or 8 years. So I figured I would probably last 2 or 3 years. And then, my goal, because I grew up in Chicago, was to get back home. So I would be doing the news there. But I, about 4 or 5 years into St. Louis, my agent said, we've got an offer from Chicago, and I said no, thank you, because we just fell in love with St. Louis, and this is home, and I wouldn't want to be anywhere else.
We're in Chicago, Michael.
Grew up in Wilmette, went to New Trier High School, and we were just up visiting my mom last weekend and drove around the old neighborhood. I couldn't afford to live where I grew up anymore, so but that's okay. It's still, there's still a lot of good memories from growing up there.
And of the bigger cities, what's closest to where you grew up? Like, is it on the Bolingbrook side? Is it on the Oak Brook side?
No, so it used to take 20 minutes to get from Wilmette to downtown. So it's a north suburb. Most of the people are Cubs fans where I grew up. Highland Park, Deerfield, Evanston, Wilmette, Glenview, Glenbrook, all those areas are kind of all together.
And of all the Cubs to pick your favorite, you go Glenn Beckert.
Yeah. I'm not sure exactly why. I couldn't even tell you why, but I remember getting his baseball card. He was, on those Topps baseball card, the three rookies from 1965 to kind of look out for, or three Cubs rookies, and his face was on there, and so after that, anytime I got a chance to wear a number, like in Little League, it was number 18 for Glenn Beckert. Um, I got to talk to him years ago on J.C. Corcoran's radio show, and I corresponded with him a little bit. Ken Holtzman was his teammate, and Ken Holtzman grew up in St. Louis, and he used to be the athletic director over at the Jewish Community Center, and I used to work out there, and so I got to talking about those old days with the Cubs. The Cubs of my youth is still very special in my heart, but somewhere, about 5-10 years into becoming a St. Louis, and I don't know what happens here, but even a Cubs fan can be converted, and I was. So now, even when the Cubs won the World Series in a few years ago, it didn't mean much to me, because I was happy for my grandfather's memory, because he was a Cubs fan, and my father's memory. But to me, I only cared about the Cardinals winning the World Series.
Is there a baseball card in some shoebox with a young Mike Bush on it?
With me on it?
Yeah.
No.
I used to
No.
do that. They take your picture and it costs like $4 and they put you on the baseball card.
No, I never had that opportunity. No, I don't. But when I went to college, it's the old story. I had like tons and tons of baseball cards, and it was a big deal. You could get, a whole bunch for just $1 back in those days. And I had a bunch. I went to college. My mom cleaned out my room. They're all gone. So it's
Ended
too
up
bad.
your first job out of college was Tucson. Is that correct?
Correct. Yes.
And
So,
Tucson and Chicago, they're not exactly brothers.
well, a couple of things here. So I knew very early on what I wanted to do. I wanted to be in broadcasting, really as far back as I can remember. My mom got me a tape recorder when I was about 5 years old, 6 years old. I used to turn down the sound to the Cubs games and broadcast into them. My high school had a radio station, and I became the sports director, and I did all the New Trier play-by-play. I called the radio play-by-play of their 1975 Illinois State Soccer Championship. So I knew what I wanted to do, and I wanted to go somewhere. I have to get into college, and so I wasn't going to Harvard. And B, I wanted to go somewhere that was small enough to big enough to have a local TV station, but small enough that maybe they would have students do some work. And so I chose Tucson, University of Arizona, because I thought maybe I would get that opportunity, and it worked out. I called one day. I said, I'll come. I'll sweep the floors. I'll do whatever you need me to do. I ended up interning for like a year and a half, and one day the governor of Arizona, Bruce Babbitt, was coming to Tucson, and the weekend reporter called in sick. So they said, Mike, you go out and cover it. They put me on the air, and I got a job off of that. So that was in May of 1978. So that my first job was at KVOA TV in Tucson, Arizona.
You're going to school in Arizona. You get your job at Tucson. What's the first gig outside of your comfort zone?
Well, I mean, I guess the whole thing was outside of my comfort zone because, I mean, even though it was a dream, I never thought it would come true, and it came true. I was 20 years old. But I got a job. I got my first job offer out of Tucson because I was making $8,500 a year. My first job
on that burger, big man.
Yeah, exactly. my job was first job offer was in San Antonio, Texas, which I ended up not taking. And then I finally got a job in New Orleans. That was my second job. And New Orleans was out of my comfort zone the entire time I was there. I mean, it's a wonderful place. I've got great memories, but I was a fish out of water there. It never felt real comfortable. And I knew I wouldn't stay very long. And we stayed 2 years and moved back to the Midwest, got a job in Kansas City.
Learn how to make a good jambalaya?
A little bit. I actually love cooking, and I learned a little bit about cooking when I was there. So, in fact, I took a couple of cooking classes. And I met my wife, so that was a good thing too.
We had Jackie Smith on. He said the best jambalayas are six pack recipe, meaning that you got it down to 6.
Yeah, I think that's probably right. Yeah.
All right. So how did we meet Claudia?
Well, she worked for the same TV station that I did. So she was, we were both kind of fish out of water. She got a job at WVUE in New Orleans, which was at the time the ABC station. And she was a Chiron operator, ran cameras. She had worked at a TV station in Philadelphia and was just looking to, go somewhere. And she got the job, and we met, and like I say, 2 fish out of water, and it clicked, and we've been married this summer. It'll be 39 years.
When you could actually date people you worked with, concept.
Yeah, exactly. It was a very different world back then.
How did you propose? Everybody likes a good proposal story. You got one?
Yeah, it's not a great proposal story. I put a fake ring in a hurricane glass at Pat O'Brien's in New Orleans. It was like one of those gumball machine rings because I couldn't afford to actually buy a ring at that point. And we were just out, and I asked her to marry me. And we had really, I think we had only been going out 3 or 4 months when I asked her to marry me. And then we were engaged for about a year before we got married.
There's some confidence pulling the trigger 3 months in. Or don't let her think about it. Jump in real quick.
Yeah, just don't let her give her any thought to say no.
Now, are you married with children when you land in Kansas City? Because a lot of broadcasters, that's always where people don't understand how you got to St. Louis and got to 36 years. There's a lot of insecurity. There's a lot of stuff happening before you get to where you ended up. Are you married, Claudia, when you moved to Kansas City, or do you have any kids at the
We
time?
were married when we moved to Kansas City. We had no kids. So my son Matthew was born while we were in Kansas City. And then after we got the job in St. Louis, 3 weeks after we got here, my daughter was born, and I missed the birth because I was covering Lou Brock being inducted into the Hall of Fame in Cooperstown, and my daughter decided to come 5 weeks early. So I thought it was a safe trip to go on, and my wife called me and says I'm in labor,
Mm.
and what was fun about that is, I joke with Lou for many years after that, and he got to know my daughter a little bit, and said something like, he liked me better than he liked you, because I missed the birth. So, yeah, I only had one kid when we moved to St. Louis.
So you're married. You've got one kid. Correct me if any of this is wrong, by the way.
Yeah.
Things didn't work out for you in Kansas City, and there's not any good broadcaster out there who hasn't been fired at least once, twice, or 5 times. And
Yeah.
showing the confidence that they have in you, you get a whopping 2-year contract.
Yes. Well, I mean, that's how it happens, that I was lucky to even get this job. My closest friend in the world at the time was the 10 o'clock producer here, and he gave my tape to the news director, and fortunately they liked it. So that's how I ended up getting the job. And I've been here now for 36 years. So
At the
it worked
time,
out
man,
well.
yeah, at the time, you're walking into the mammoth, which was Zipper Zippa. I mean,
Oh
I
yeah,
don't know
yeah.
how all the ratings at that time really worked, but I mean, I know Zip was the first guy who did the funky stuff and did the funny
Yeah.
stuff. George Michaels was doing his thing nationally, but Zip was one of the many, I'm sure, who were doing it locally.
Right.
You came into town, it's got to be daunting to realize this is what you're up against.
Well, I don't know if it's daunting. I mean, I knew he was kind of a phenomenon in St. Louis, but to me, I always felt like if I just did a good job every day, things would be okay. And I did walk into a great situation. Channel 5 was kind of, it ended up being a behemoth. At the time I walked in, we were vying for first place, and eventually became a huge rating success, in the days when everybody watched the 10 o'clock news, the 5, 6, and 10 o'clock news, because there was nothing else to watch at 10 o'clock. There was no Netflix, there was no cable. ESPN was our cable penetration in St. Louis wasn't even that big, so not a lot of people even watched ESPN back then. So I was walking into a good situation. I had great support with people like Jay Randolph. So I mean, it was yeah. I mean, he was definitely the big sports star in town. But ratings wise, I think Channel 5 was pretty much doing pretty well by then.
Michael, I'm a big believer in trying to put myself in a position where I look a lot smarter than I am.
Okay. Well, good.
Well, that's one of those deals where you're not taking credit for KSDK's ratings with you being on board, but then at the same time, you realized on paper, I'm going to look really good in a year and a half because people don't understand what is happening to KSDK. That's what I meant.
Well, I mean, the thing is that I was surrounded by unbelievable people. One thing I did learn early on, and I was, I think it served me well, was as soon as you can, surround yourself with good people. Some people you can do that because you have some control. Other people, you just get lucky. I was working with Dick Ford and Karen Foss and Deanne Lane and Mike Owens and all these tremendous broadcasters, Jay Randolph, and it was Art Holiday. It was just, I was put in a great situation. And then I was given enough leeway with, starting Sports Plus and stuff like that to be able to hire people like Trey Wingo and Matt Weiner and Frank Cusimano. So I knew if I surrounded myself with really good people, or I was around good people, that would make me look better.
And really, what you just did, for those who don't know, people in media have huge egos. And it is very rare that there's a team aspect as there was and is hopefully at KSDK. You mentioned Jay Randolph Sr. Is there a
Yeah.
nicer guy who's ever walked the earth than Jay
No, there
Randolph?
is not. I mean, he was so supportive from day one, and to this day, I consider him to be one of the great gentlemen I have ever met in broadcasting. And you know, he doesn't get enough credit for what a great broadcaster he is. I mean, how many guys can do football and golf and equestrian events and anything else you give him and do it well? There's just very few people, and you know, obviously back then we had the Cardinals. Channel 5 had the Cardinal games, and when he would go away to do a golf event, they would let me do the Cardinal games. I mean, I'm sitting, one of my first years here, I'm sitting at Chavez Ravine in Los Angeles in the booth with Jack Buck calling a Cardinals Dodgers game, and I'm thinking, I just cannot believe this. I had to pinch myself. Before that game that we did, I'm sitting in the lunchroom with Jack Buck in the press facility, and Vin Scully sits down with us. What? Vin Scully and Jack Buck are at my table, and it's just the three of us. I said nothing. I was so intimidated, but man, I was, you talk about being a fly on the wall. I was actually there. So it was really cool. And Jack Buck, through my entire career, could not have been more generous. So I just, like I say, I just got very lucky.
What is it like to do play-by-play with Jack Buck at Wrigley in front of your folks?
Well, so let me tell you that story, because this, you know, being a Cubs fan growing up and then coming to St. Louis, which is the best baseball town in America, I found out, I looked at the schedule one of those years, and we had to do Cubs Cardinals games. I got to do a Cub Cardinal game at Wrigley Field. So I talking to my dad, and I say, why don't you guys come? I'll get you tickets and stuff like that. So I got them tickets to the game. And before the game, I'm on the field doing some interviews and whatever. And I see them, and I see Jack, and I introduce my parents to Jack. And Jack says, well, you're coming up to the booth, aren't you? And it never occurred to me to invite my parents up to the booth. I didn't know what the protocols were, and I just am not going to, piss anybody off. So they said, sure. So they come up, and they're watching me and Jack do the first inning. And then Jack, after the first inning, says, kid, have at it. And he walked out of the booth for like 3 innings while I did the play-by-play with my parents sitting in the background of the Cubs and the Cardinals. It was, that's Jack Buck. I mean, he was so generous and so nice. And to this day, that's still a big thrill. And I can't believe it actually happened to me.
Do you ever try to finagle your way into being able to sing seventh inning stretch? Take me out to the ball game.
No, nobody cares about me singing the 7th inning stretch. No, I never tried to do that, but that's a cool thing. That would be a cool thing.
Hey, you mentioned Art. He's been on the show before. Has there ever been a better script writer?
No, he's one of the things that I told him. Well, he's our news director now, and he is heavily involved in management and hiring new people and all that. And I said, I'm happy for you, but we are going to miss your storytelling so much, because who are we going to get to replace him in terms of storytelling? There isn't anybody. He's such a great storyteller. And, he also, one of the great people. So, we're very lucky to have him in that position, but I think on the air to the viewers, everybody misses his storytelling.
I say Andy Moeller. You say
one of the unsung heroes of KSDK for all these many years. I knew when I was in sports, and particularly early on, I knew what a special guy he was. I mean, he's an encyclopedia, and anytime I had a question and didn't have time to look it up, you just ask Andy. Even today, I can say, remember that story we did back in the 90s about such and such? He'll know where I can go to get it, because you use a lot of file tape when you're doing stories in local television. Um, he's been a tremendous asset to this place for these many years, and we're very lucky to have him. And I think we did, back in the day when we started Sports Plus, and had some rating success with that show. He was integral in making that happen.
Here's my first of many Mike Bush is a nice guy story.
Uh-oh.
I don't know if you remember this. 1989. We don't know each other, but we've been at Mizzou games together and worked some stuff. And Mizzou football's making a coaching change. And so Bob Stull is going to be coming to Columbia. And I'm in Columbia. I'm in a frat house with one payphone. And the kicker from Missouri is brothers with the kicker from UTEP and knows that Bob Stull has made a commitment to the team, telling them he's moving to Columbia.
Uh-huh.
So I fight off my guys in the frat house. I call you on the phone and I say, hey, you might know who I am. I'm not really sure, but blah, blah, blah. And Stull is coming. This is around 4:30. You go on the air at 5:00 and announce Bob Stull's on. I have two questions for you. One is, how many other leads did you have at the time? Was I even relevant to it? And do you remember that even at all after so many more important stories you've broke?
Well, I have a vague recollection of that. But I also remember talking to somebody in Texas, and I couldn't tell you who it was, who told me the same thing, that this was happening. And I also have a vague recollection of going to the news director and saying, I've now heard it from two, and maybe it was three people at the time, that we think this was happening. I just don't remember exactly how that played out, but thank you.
No, let me
Because I think if we broke the story, that's good.
Well, so fast forward to the summer, KSDK has an internship for college students. We get to cut the tape. We get to go on shoots, that kind of a deal.
Right.
And part of getting the internship, you got to sit in these group interviews, right? So in my group interview, there's like 13 people, and there are multiple group interviews. And Michael, I'm not there 5 minutes. I realize very quickly I'm the least qualified of the 13 people that are in my group interview. But you pulled some strings for me, man. You talked to Alice. You made it happen. And so that was just another example of you helping people when given the chance so that they could go on and do good things on their own.
Well, good. I'm glad that happened. Back then we used to have at least in sports, we had like 5 or 6 interns a semester. It was fantastic because we could really use their help. Now we're lucky to have, 2 interns for the entire newsroom for a semester. So things have definitely changed. And I don't know if it's for the better, because that was, I'm sure for you, it was a good experience just to see what it's like day to day.
Have you missed driving around VP Fair in those golf carts?
No, I do not miss that at all. Man, yes, we had to, when we had the VP Fair back then, that was like a work weekend or week, depending on when, July 4th. And it was very stressful because it was hot and people were not always in a good mood. And we just did wall-to-wall VP Fair coverage, as I recall.
How long were you in St. Louis before Sports in Your Shorts with JC?
I want to say that started, I came here in 85, and I would want to say that started about 87, 88.
A couple years.
Yeah.
That was a relationship where, you were benefiting him and he was helping you.
Oh, I think it's more that than it was me helping him. I mean, it was, when you first get to a town and nobody knows you, your whole goal is to get some kind of Q score so your bosses keep you. And that means people need to know your name a little bit. And getting on that radio show, which at the time was the big morning radio show in St. Louis, he is and was so talented and so funny, and was extremely nice to me, and I was very lucky to be on that show. It made me a little sleep deprived, but other than that, it was really fantastic, and it did great things to help me get into the minds of St. Louis viewers.
He's been on the show. He told some kind of story. It was your birthday, and they came to your house. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah. So they conspired with my wife, he and Joe Mason. So I would do at first I would go to the studio, and that only lasted a little while because it was when you work till 10:30, and I'm an insomniac anyway, I was really having sleep trouble. So they put the line in my house. And I would just go downstairs, like the alarm would ring at 6 a.m. and I'd go down, and at 6:10 I would do the first sportscast or whatever. Well, my wife conspired with JC and Joe, and they came into my house in the middle of the night, set up, began the show from my basement. I'm asleep in my bedroom, and my alarm does not go off. So they came into my bedroom to wake me up. But the entire time they were on the air, it was like them in church, and they're not supposed to laugh. They were just laughing hysterically. And he must have played that tape, every year after that for 20, 30 years.
How'd you come up with Goodbye, Mr. Rawlings?
I stole it from the movie The Natural.
Oh, okay.
Remember the movie The Natural?
Yeah. It's good places movies to steal from.
Yeah, I just borrowed. It was one of my favorite movies, and that's what they said. If you listen to the kind of the radio calls they did in there, that's what they said in there. So I just ripped it off.
I could be wrong in this, Mike. So I grew up in St. Louis, born and raised. I knew you from sports, but I got to be honest, man. One of the things I most remember now is your work with the Jerry Lewis telethon.
Well, I always said, and I still say today, because we have now made it an all local telethon, but that Labor Day was the most important day of my year. What happened was Channel 5 has been doing the muscular dystrophy telethon for 40 years or so. And in 1987 or so, they asked me if I would co-host with Bob Richards, who was our weather guy. And I said, sure. But as we were getting closer, I said, if I'm going to do this, I need to know a lot more about it. And so I got to know some folks at the MDA. And one day for the remember the Post-Dispatch used to have a TV guide inside, right, and they would put local things on the cover, and they were going to do something for the telethon. And this little girl came to Channel 5. Her name was Allison Reinhart. She was 3 years old. Her mom, Donna, came as well. We took our picture. I got to know them very well. And once I met them, that was it. I fell madly in love with her. I fell madly in love with MDA and all the families. And so I did the telethon for many, many, many years. Then the Jerry Lewis MDA telethon, as we knew it growing up, stopped. The MDA stopped it. I thought it was a mistake because very few charities have a day where everybody knows that's what happens on this day. Labor Day was MDA. But they stopped it. Jerry died. We took a couple of years off, but the local families said they really missed the telethon. So I went to the boss and said, why don't we do a local telethon? We'll just do something on Labor Day. And we used to be on for 19 and a half hours. A lot of that was, pitching to Jerry Lewis, but it was a long telethon. But the last few years we've been doing it. And this year we're going back to Grant's Farm.
Oh, nice.
We're going to be in prime time on Sunday, September 5th, from 8 to 10 p.m. And I'm very excited that we can, it's much different than it used to be, but I'm very excited that it's an all local telethon, and we're going to do some good for the kids.
I'm excited about
muscular
that.
dystrophy.
September when again?
September 5th,
okay.
Sunday, September 5th. And it's the first time we've ever been in prime time. So I am fortunate enough to have a boss who, really cares about it, and has also lived through the days when MDA and KSDK were like this.
Michael, you Google your commercials with Bob, they're still funny.
They were so well done. And that's another thing, I talk about JC and how he helped me, but those commercials really helped me too. And that we would fly to Los Angeles. Imagine this. I'm 27, 28 years old. We'd fly to Los Angeles. We'd have a film crew shoot these things. It would take, for a 30-second commercial, it would take sometimes 2 days of 14-hour days to do it. And we had trailers, we had makeup people. It was really quite a thing. And they did really, really well for us. So yeah, I think they were very well done by people who really knew what they were doing.
You've spoken publicly about the tragedies, so we really don't need to go there. It was something that, really shaped what you were doing moving forward. I got a really nice Bob Richards story that you might not have heard before. I'm interning there and I'm trying to be under the radar, but Mario Johnson, if you remember that name,
yeah,
thinks I'm bigger than I am, right? So he shows up at KSDK and he wants a tour. And I'm not wanting to be a loser in front of Mario Johnson, but a tour. So we get Mario down to the basement and Bob Richards is getting ready. It's not 4 o'clock, but it's 3 o'clock.
Yeah.
And Bob, who's met me 3 times, who do we got here? And I'm like,
yeah,
this is Mario. He'd really like to meet you. And Bob does 5 minutes. He puts Mario on the teleprompter. He puts him in front of the maps. He doesn't know me, doesn't know Mario, but he was just that nice of a person.
Yeah.
Save face for me and got Mario out of the building.
Yeah.
And, sometimes people, they lose their way, but for what I knew, Bob Richards was a pretty nice person.
Well, and anybody who took a tour back then, that was, even when I'm giving the tours, that was our stop, was Bob, because that's how he was with everybody. He was, as from what I knew, none of us knew kind of some of his personal issues, but from what I knew, he was a friendly guy. He was fun. And we had a lot of good times together. We particularly on air stuff that we did together. We kind of became a team because they did those commercials. We did teases every night together. And so, there are a lot of good memories there.
What was it like in the room where you're pitching Sports Plus over Love Connection?
Well, it's a good memory to remember that. It was difficult. Bill Bolster was our general manager, and he, everything he touched turned to ratings gold. So we were out shooting one of those Bob and Mike commercials, and we actually shot one of the commercials with KNBC in Los Angeles because they basically had the same commercials for their weather guy and sports guy. And their sports guy tells me, you're never going to make any dent until you have a Sunday night sports show. And so I went back and Andy and I talked, and I made a presentation to Bill Bolster for a Sunday night sports show. And at first he was very resistant because we had the Love Connection. Remember Chuck Woolery, 2 and 2, 2 and 2. And it did very well at the Sunday night 10:30 time slot. He says, all right, I'll tell you what, I'll give you 10 minutes at the end of the newscast, and then we'll do Love Connection. So from 10:30 to 10:40. So we did it, and we did it as highly produced as we possibly could. And it really was more than 10 minutes because we got our regular sports time plus the 10 minutes. And people watched, and more people fortunately watched than actually watched the Love Connection ratings wise. So then they expanded it to a half an hour and eventually an hour. But we were talking not too long ago about how back then I would call a meeting from the sports department if we didn't get at least a 10 rating for Sports Plus. It had to be in double figures. What did we do wrong? Can we figure out something else to do this week so we can get back over the 10 rating? Now, even the newscasts don't 10 rating is unheard of. You're lucky to get a 1.5 now. So it was a very different time then. But, I feel very lucky that we were relevant enough that many people watched.
And what was fun as a listener, sorry, viewer, man, when I heard Bob Costas was on,
Oh yeah,
all bets were off.
yeah. Well, when I heard Bob Costas was on, all bets were off, because I was always more nervous to interview Bob Costas than anybody who came in, because he's on such a pedestal for me. But again, here's another guy who could not have been nicer and more generous throughout my career. And I've been lucky enough to get to know him pretty well over the years, and he has been nothing but nice to me.
People don't remember how unique that was. I mean, back then sports would get 4 minutes, 3.5 minutes, give or take. Now they're probably like, if you cough, you've lost your time. It's just
yeah.
But when I Googled this morning, trying to do a little prep, man, you had a really nice interview with John Wooden. And you had the opportunity to like have a conversation where you had an interest, but he was enjoying being there. So and I think people forget about that.
Well, one of the great things about that show was, one of the things I was determined to do is I thought it would give the show gravitas to get people in our studio. I mean, if John Wooden or Bob Knight or Mark McGuire or Ozzie Smith or Stan Musial, if they would come down to the show, that lifts the show up, as opposed to interviewing them at the ballpark or somewhere else where everybody has access. It must mean something that the show's pretty important if they would come to the studio. So that's kind of our philosophy. And we were so lucky to interview so many amazing people through those years. John Wooden is truly one of my favorite interviews of all time. And like you said, I mean, we had an hour show, so doing a 15, 20-minute interview was fine, as long as the person's interesting. And getting to sit down with him was, people call Mike Krzyzewski the greatest basketball coach because he's retiring this year. Hello. Please look at John Wooden's record. Please look at all the championships he won. I'm not sure that even Mike Krzyzewski can match that.
Let me throw some love to the Pit. Man, I love me some Pit.
Well, that's another thing that because we had an hour show, we at first, the second half hour, because if you remember, KMOX was the big behemoth and call-in radio was really big in St. Louis. And so I thought, well, maybe we could do that on television. So we would get media people and we would use video to kind of cover the visuals. But we had calls, and later they could write in and whatever. And we called it the Pit. Bernie Miklas came up with that name, and we called it the Pit, and it was a lot of fun. I mean, again, that's discussing sports, which any time there's something going on in St. Louis that's grist for the mill, somehow it usually is sports related in some way.
You've got a fantastic career where people forget that you were the voice of the Super Bowl champion St. Louis Rams. I mean,
yeah,
that's usually that's the beginning of the resume. You know what I'm saying?
Again, you talk about total luck. It was total luck. I was asked to do the Rams games coming off of 4-12 season. What? And then Trent Green gets hurt. So what are the chances anything's going to happen? All the games that year were at noon. And so because my boss here told me, yeah, you can do the games, but you still have to do Sports Plus that night. So, we would go out. If I was in San Francisco, we would go out there and I would do the show live. But most nights we could fly back from Detroit or wherever, Tennessee, and after the game, and we'd put together Sports Plus. So it was, that year was just, I will say it was maybe the most stressful year of my career, because not only was I doing this job, I was so concerned about doing a good job on the radio, I would memorize all the players' names, during the week from the other team. And you try to memorize the numbers or even the left tackle and the right tackle so you don't screw it up. It was a very stressful year for me, but heck, I'm sitting on the 50-yard line calling the Super Bowl. So it doesn't get any better than that. And it's really, again, it was total luck, and I feel very blessed.
Did you get a ring?
I didn't get a ring, but they gave me a replica Lombardi trophy, which I have on a shelf.
Right.
And I also, got to know Kurt Warner very well that year. The next year, he ended up doing a show for Channel 5 we did twice a week. And because people just wouldn't leave him alone, we ended up doing some of them at my house because I live close to him, and he would come over to my house with his son Zach, and Zach would stay in the truck outside because he loved the dials and the screens with our engineer Cecil Corbett. And in my living room, I would talk to Kurt Warner and interview him on Channel 5. So it was pretty cool.
So is Brad Pitt playing you in the new Kurt Warner movie?
Sure. No, I don't think so. Well, they gotta find a really old guy. I don't know who that would be. Yeah. I don't. Right, so I don't think I'm a player in that movie. I don't think I was a big enough part of that season.
Well, there's the kid at the house. I mean, that's
but that was. Yeah, but nobody knows that but you now. So people didn't know that. We didn't advertise that it was.
See, Hollywood will say that the kid slept over at your house while Kurt was doing groceries.
Right, exactly. Exactly.
All right, so you've been doing the news thing a long time. I apologize. This is more, I'm curious than ever. I thought I remembered that you did have aspirations or thoughts about being in news, but I've seen in some articles where you say you did not. You were having a great time in sports, but when 9/11 hit, you thought there's something bigger.
So like a couple years before I made the decision, I was asked if I'd be willing to go in the news. And I said, I'd rather not. I mean, you don't say no in this business because then they may say bye-bye. So, but I said, I'd rather not. I'd rather stay in sports. But after 9/11, and I mean, I remember the morning of 9/11, when you're a sports guy, you feel so helpless because not only are you, the sports guy and you're not going to be doing sports, but they're not even asking you for help to do interviews with other people. I mean, I tried to interview doctors and tried to interview people, experts, and but nobody was interested in anything I had to do. And I realized, I'm not sure that after all this time that there's anything left for me in sports that is more exciting than what I've already done. And maybe now, if they ask again, I would be willing. And they did ask again. And after 9/11 and that helpless feeling, I said, yes, I would be interested. And I do not regret it. I mean, I miss doing Sports Plus as a show because we had autonomy and management kind of left us alone and we had some success. But other than that, I feel so grateful to have made the move and to have had the opportunity to kind of expand my storytelling, and again, blessed.
Assistant basketball coaches always talk about the 6 inches. You're on the same bench, nothing changes, but you move 6 inches to your right. What was moving 6 inches like for you?
It was intimidating at first, but again, I was surrounded by really good people. I think one of the things that I am proud that I did about a year into it, after a particularly rough night in news where there were, shootings and fires and all kinds of bad stuff. I went to my boss and I said, we have got to find some balance for the viewers because otherwise anybody who watches this is just going to be depressed.
Right.
And so that's when we started the Making a Difference reports. And it allowed me a chance to do what I love, which is storytelling. And it also allowed us to put some balance on the air to tell some positive stories, which I think we do a much better job of now than we did back then. And I just, it's still hard to watch the news. Sometimes on my days off, I do not watch it because I just need a break, because the world is a crazy place right now. But I really enjoyed telling those stories, and I get a little more time than what you would normally get for doing a news story. So that's something I really put my heart and soul into.
I love the Musial Awards. How'd you get involved?
So I'm pretty good friends with Frank Viverito, who is the president of the Sports Commission. They had brought something called the National Sportsmanship Awards to St. Louis for 1 year at the time. He asked me if I would MC this dinner, which I did. And after that dinner, I said, this could be a lot more. We started talking about it. Next year, we started doing some stories for it, and then it kind of we kind of took off. I've got a little production company on the side that again, getting back to the storytelling thing, we decided to start doing some big stories for the National Sportsmanship Awards. It got bigger. We went from the Chase Park Plaza, room, all the way to the Stiefel Theater, and now it's a nationally broadcast thing. The Sports Commission and the National Sportsmanship Foundation decided to make it the Musial Awards in honor of Stan Musial. I want to say it's been about 8 to 10 years ago already. And CBS liked it so much that we've done it 2 years, and we'll do it again this year on CBS.
And isn't it fun when good people with their heart in the right place get to reward people for being good?
Yeah. And isn't that, that's the thing. Like I said, there's so much bad stuff happening. Making a difference and doing the Musial Awards keeps me sane. Right. And I hope that it spreads an important message, because I've never done any of these Musial Award stories which honor sportsmanship. I've never done any stories where any of these people did something good because they thought they were going to get on the Musial Awards, or they thought they were going to get a TV story done about them. They do it out of the goodness of their heart, and that's what makes it so special. They're thrilled to be honored, and these are people. Most of the people nobody has ever heard of,
right?
And they did whatever they did. And someone tweeted it, or someone took a tape of it, or put it on Facebook, or maybe there was a local reporter there that did an article, and then the National Sportsmanship Foundation and the Musial Awards folks, they find it, and then we kind of go over what would make a good TV story, and we've been really, really lucky with some just amazing, wonderful people for the Musial Awards every year after year after year.
And I know this to be true. And this is why it's really fun to see the good side of stuff. I don't know how long ago it was, maybe 5 years ago. There was a physically challenged kid who was playing football, and the other team backs off and lets him score a touchdown, right?
Right.
That happens all the time now.
Right.
That one single act from 5 years ago, give or take, that now happens dozens and dozens of times a year. That's awesome.
Right. And that's the same thing with making a difference. Your hope is, when you tell these stories, that maybe it'll spur someone else to do something good. And the Musials are a perfect example of that. We've, year after year, it used to be we really had to scrounge for stories. Now we don't have to do that, because there's a lot of good things happening in this country that people just aren't even aware of.
All right, so we're catching Michael over at KSDK. He's got a limited time. He's gave us some. We really appreciate that. I knew I was going to ask you one or two questions, right? One, I knew I was going to ask you about the internship, just to see where it all fell. Improved my life, man. Thank you.
Well, good.
Second is COVID. What responsibility did you feel on your shoulders that you needed to relay, project calm folks down or get information out. You're the anchor at NBC St. Louis. Did you
Yeah.
feel a personal responsibility of something that you were trying to make sure they?
Sure, sure. I mean, it's not unlike the responsibility I feel every day to try to keep people informed about what's going on in their community. At the time of COVID, however, my co-anchor, Ann Allred, who is one of the great people and one of the great journalists I've ever met, she had a kidney transplant a few years ago, and so she couldn't be here during COVID. She had to be at home doing her job. Kay Quinn has battled cancer, so she also more vulnerable to COVID. So it fell on me to be here, and I was here with about five other people on my shift. And what that meant was we were kind of the last line of defense. Everybody was doing their jobs remotely, but we were kind of the last line of defense to make sure everything worked on the air, which was stressful, but also, uh, you know, I felt a great camaraderie with the people that were here with us. But for the viewers, I think the most important thing was to tell them the most factual information as we could. I did interviews twice a week with Dr. Jason Newland, who was kind of on the forefront of our COVID response in St. Louis. Um, and, I mean, we did our best to just get the facts out, and we're still doing that today to make sure everybody is informed, and then they can make their own decisions about what they want to do. My hope is that everybody gets vaccinated, but I know that's not going to happen for everybody. But at least we're going to give them the information so that they can make their own choices.
There does not need to be an answer to this question. Was there a story where you went, I'm not doing that? Or was there a story where you said, we have to do this?
I'm not sure. I'm not doing that ever came up. Early on in the pandemic, I did a story on a family, the Winehouse family, and I kind of knew their family from mutual friends, and it really hit home to me because um, they were basically my age. They got COVID. Jane Winehouse nearly died. Mike Winehouse had all kinds of complications. And then kind of when the vaccines came up, we were able to do a follow-up, and fortunately, they're all doing really well. And that kind of hit home, and it was kind of my North Star as I covered the COVID thing through the entire year, because I knew how it personally how it could affect families.
So as we get ready to wrap this up, now you're still fighting what's going to happen in the next election. That gets very complicated. Michael, I'm apolitical. Here's my question to you. I do watch CNN more than I watch Fox. All right.
Mhm.
When Trump lost, it kind of seemed like some CNN guys were giddy and they lost their professionalism. Every story started with how happy they were that we had a change. And again, at the end of the day, I really don't care. It just seemed to me that they were taking away some really important stories and just saying stuff they've been dying to say for 2 years. You're professional. You're doing this. That hit your radar?
Well, here's the thing. When you do local news, there is no opinion. We don't have commentators. If you watch Fox, if you watch CNN, if you watch MSNBC, every night, yeah, they bring you news, but they also bring you opinion. And sometimes the opinions, in my opinion, are outrageous. Sometimes they're right on. But that's not what we do. Our job is to tell you what's going on, just present the facts, and let you make your own choices. Um, personally, I wish there was more of that going on. If I were advising anybody, if they want to watch the news, watch watch the NBC Nightly News, want to watch ABC World News Tonight, watch the CBS Evening News. I think they go by the same standards as they've always gone by in the days of Walter Cronkite and Huntley Brinkley. But in local news, opinion is the only opinion we care about are the viewers' opinions, and we'll get their opinions on the air. Like we'll go out to a town, and there are people who don't think there should be mask mandates, and we'll put them on the air. And there are people that think there should be mask mandates, and we'll put them on the air. And we try to do that as fairly as possible. So our job is, like I say, to present the facts, and then hopefully the viewers make whatever choice they want to make.
Outside of anchors in Illinois, you may have been the first one who kind of knew something is a brewing with Obama.
Well, yeah, I don't know about that, but I did, like, literally, I want to say it was 3 weeks after he was elected senator. I went to Washington and spent a couple of days with him because he had kind of taken the country by storm. And I knew pretty early on that he would be a player on the national stage. I had no inside knowledge that he was going to run for president, but I had a suspicion that he might, because he, when you're in politics, and you're hoping to run for president, you need to catch lightning in a bottle, and he certainly did.
Last question. Appreciate your time. We'll do a St. Louis 7. We'll wrap this thing up. Again, you're doing me a favor. You got work to do. What's the one thing maybe that you want to make sure before you hang it up that you get to do?
David, to be honest with you, I have no answer to that, because I have done way more than I ever thought. I hope to do a good job every single day, to not let the viewers down. The Musial Awards and the MDA telethon are kind of like my pillars now. And so I hope to continue doing that, and doing that well, and to not let the MDA families down, and not let the Musial folks down. So, but do I have a goal like to call a game, or I've done all that. I just feel very lucky to be in this job, doing what I'm doing at my age. People ask me how long you're going to keep doing this. And I say, well, on the golf course of my career, I'm on the 18th hole. So I don't know how long it's going to take me to play the 18th hole, but I just feel so lucky that I've gotten to play the course, and here I am on the 18th hole.
All right, here's my 2 cents, right?
Okay.
You're going to step down when you want to, and you're going to do 4 or 6 episodes, specials a year that are projects near and dear to your heart.
That'd be great. That sounds like a great scenario. You talk to the bosses and get that done for me.
Michael, good to see you. Thanks, man.
Good to see you.